Hey, what's up everybody? It's Kellen here from Start Your Systems again, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the launch trailer of the 2021 MXGP video game, the latest edition of the MXGP series, coming to I think 5 or 6 different consoles on November 30th. I'll have some more information in the description below if you guys want to check it out. But I wanted to make this video today to kind of just go over the announcement trailer real quick and talk about it, and then we'll do some MXGP 2020 gameplay. And I want to kind of give my thoughts and opinions on a lot of stuff I saw about this announcement yesterday. I didn't make a reaction immediately to the announcement. I didn't post a video or anything. I watched a lot of other people's videos and what they thought of it, and obviously got some comments and feedbacks from our social posts that we did about this video on what people are also thinking about this game. So I wanted to kind of respond to some of that criticism or just some of the comments that I've been seeing and react to it myself, and go over some things that I feel like a lot of people either miss or just get frustrated with about this game, and give you some of my thoughts on that. So let's jump in. All right, so here's the announcement trailer. Let's just take a look. So there's a little bit of copyrighted music, I believe, playing in the background. I have it on low, so hopefully it doesn't get caught. There's not even bike sounds or anything like this. This is all just a lot of animated stuff, obviously. And then I believe most of this is real gameplay footage. Now, the first thing you're going to notice, and I have already played this game a little bit, is a lot of the rider positioning has the rider like really tucked in and low. And I think they're trying to go a step that I'll talk about a little bit later with that, but just kind of want to break some of these things down. You know, aesthetically it's nice. Track editor wise, they got some really cool things I think coming with the track editor. This is, I think, a new waypoint feature on some of the compound stuff that they have. So yeah, I mean, overall it's not hugely different than 2020, I don't think. It's got a lot of the same stuff. Race director, track editor, there's a career mode, you know, that's a cool little thing. And yeah, coming November 30th 2021. So we're still a month and a half, almost 2 whole months away basically from this game being released, and there are a couple tweaks and things that they can do in the meantime. But what we saw right there, what you guys are going to see in the reveal showcase that we're doing here on Start Your Systems on Thursday, October 14th, Wyndham151, Bastard, and MXWay Game are all going to be involved in that, so you guys can check out either my channel or their respective channels if you want to get their opinions. But we're going to show off some of the game, and you guys will be able to see more of it then. But again, I just wanted to talk about some things with this game and with this series pertinent to this discussion, I feel like, about where this series is going, as we're now coming into what is the 7th game in the MXGP series with MXGP 2021. Okay, so like I said, not much really seems like it has changed from MXGP 2020 to MXGP 2021. Now, like I said, I have played it a little bit, and one of the things that I can immediately point to that's different, well, a couple of things. First of all, that rider tuck position where the rider's a little bit lower to the handlebars and they're like doing this like charge mode thing. To me, I think they are going about it a little bit the wrong direction, because, I mean, if you watch someone in real life charge into a corner or go through a section or something like that, there are times where they are in that tuck position. There are also times where they are not. They are stood up a little bit more. They're up on the pegs. They're trying to navigate through a section cleanly. And then, of course, once they get into a corner, they, you know, get on the brakes and make sure that they're tucked to the inside of the corner, and they got their rider positioning stood up a little bit. So they're like in this weird, awkward phase where in MXGP 2020 the rider's like standing everywhere, like he's standing almost straight up and down, looks like he has a stick up his butt a little bit. In 2021 he's like leaned over, bent down in this charging position almost the entire time. So they, in my opinion, need to even that out, but we'll get into that when we play the game a little bit next Thursday. And then obviously the other thing that I can point out that's going to be different that you guys will see is there's a lot more pre-made ruts. In this game, here on Teufelstal, you can see there's inside-outside ruts, but they're not that big. They're not very easy to get into. MXGP 2021 seems to have more pre-made ruts in every corner, 3-4 different ruts. So it's still not what we want. It's still not, you know, real live form terrain deformation ruts that adjust and you know, come up to our liking. However, it is basically what MX Simulator has been for a long time, and it's gotten better, or, you know, updated more recently with terrain deformation. But Sim for a decade was pre-made ruts and jumps and stuff like that, so there wasn't any deformation whatsoever. So now we're getting to a level where they're making tracks with actual ruts in them, It's just not, you know, ruts that are changing over time like I think a lot of people are hoping for. So anyway, that's just the differences that I'm seeing in the new game versus the old game so far, but we'll get into that. I wanted to talk about this franchise and a retrospect of it moving into its 7th game. If we go back to MXGP 1 up until now, I just kind of wanted to briefly look over what has changed, what is different. Is the game actually getting better? Are they making the right adjustments, you know? The first thing that I see just unanimously, it seems like in the comments of a social post or in someone else's reaction video to the announcement trailer, as I mentioned, is that Milestone and these games that they make are pretty much just a carbon copy every year. It's just the same game on repeat. They just maybe update like 1 or 2 gear sets or something like that and move it on. Now, it's a fair assessment because, yes, the games don't change all that much year to year. They're pretty similar over time, and, you know, the adjustments are rather subtle. They do make some graphical improvements, they do make some physical improvements, and they do make a few changes to, you know, the customization options and stuff like that. But the thing that I wanted to point out with this, that it doesn't seem like many people ever seem to understand with Milestone's game, and that their hands are almost tied, and I feel like I've talked about this enough, but I just have to keep bringing it up. They are licensed by In-Front Moto Racing, formerly Youthstream, formerly MX Life, whatever you wanted to call them, to create an MXGP video game every year, the same way they're licensed to create a Supercross game every year by Feld Motorsports or Feld Entertainment. They need to get a game out every year. They don't have the ability to just sit and take the time and, you know, 3 or 4 years to put a game together, a la what Rainbow Studios is doing with the new MX vs. ATV Legends game. 4 years ago, All Out came out. 4 years later, here we are with a new game supposedly coming out in Q2 or Q3 of 2022. So it's almost like 5 years because it came out in 2018, did MX vs. ATV All Out. But Milestone doesn't have that luxury. They have to make a new game every year. They are licensed to do so. And because of that, and the quick turnaround that they have, they are limited to the features that they can change. The prime example that you guys can always look back to is any of you guys out there that are sports fans, whether you like football or baseball or soccer or whatever, you know, FIFA doesn't change that much year after year. Madden doesn't change that much year after year. You know, MLB The Show doesn't change that much year after year. 2K doesn't change that much year after year. And the changes that they do make usually more or less pertain to, you know, career mode aspects or other features added to the game. They don't make a lot of physical updates because they have basically created a system that they have stuck with or like, and that's what they're going with. And in some degree, I feel like that's what Milestone has gotten to with these games, where they feel like they've found a level with the game that they're comfortable with, and they don't want to change too much with it. And whether they're right or wrong for that, you know, that's totally up for debate. The one thing I will say is that as many people that I see complain about this game, there are actually a lot of people that like these games. It's sometimes hard for those people that complain about it nonstop to believe, but there's a pretty strong audience of people that are, you know, vehement that these games are some of the best motocross games out there. And the problem that you run into, if you're like a sim fan or an MX Bikes fan, or you think that those games are, you know, above all and the best, is that those games are very challenging. Even MX Bikes, as easy as it can be with some of the assists turned on and stuff like that, it's still a challenging game. And the Milestone developers and Rainbow Studios developers have to make these console games for someone that's like 5-6 years old and just trying to, you know, move around in any direction on a video game, as much as they have to make it for someone who's 25-30 years old that has an advanced knowledge of the sport and is a diehard fan like you and I that are watching this video are. So they have to walk a tightrope, a balancing act, if you will, of making the game easy enough for the casual consumer to play it and the hardcore fans to play it, and both to find enjoyment in it. So it's tough for them to do that. I really think it's arguably one of the toughest things to do, because I feel like even Madden and FIFA and all them, you see casual fans play those games and they love them and they have a freaking blast. And then, you know, I'm a pretty big baseball fan, and I follow a lot of people that are, you know, baseball savvy accounts and stuff like that, and they talk crap on MLB The Show all the time. And there's a lot of people that enjoy that game, and there's a lot of people that hate that game. It's like such a mixed bag, and those are the types of games that end up getting produced when they're licensed to come out with, you know, a new game every year. as is MXGP with in-front moto. So, you know, that's one of those things that just doesn't seem like people understand that much. And the fact that Milestone is not EA or, you know, one of these massive companies. They're a big company, but they're not huge. They're not something where they can basically just pour tons of funds and research and development into this game. They are limited in their resources. They're limited in their time, and they can only get so much done every year. Does that make up for some of the things that are glaringly wrong with these games? No, I'm not trying to make excuses for them. I'm just trying to answer some of these questions that I see so often that I feel like it's a pretty simple answer, that people are like, why don't they just spend time to make you know, another game, and why don't they take 2 or 3 years off and come back? It's like they can't. Like, they're licensed to do it as such, and if they say, hey, Infront, no, we don't want to make this game this year or next year, we're going to wait a couple years and come back in 2024 with the best game that you've ever seen, then Infront will go, that's great, okay, we're going to go to a different developer, and they're going to make MXGP 22 and 23 for us, and I think by that point in time we'll be pretty satisfied with them. Like, that's just how businesses work. So yeah, I mean, that's just a quick answer to the roundabout, you know, problem that people always seem to have, which is like, these games never change. And that's true, they don't change that much. But what I would argue is that, are they better, or have they changed enough over the years to at least warrant a little bit of like, hey, we're moving in the right direction? So that's why I wanted to make this video and talk about this today. If we go back to MXGP 1, the very first release, I mean, I could have went back all the way to Mud, the official motocross video game or whatever, that came out in 2013, because it was a Milestone release. It was in conjunction with another studio, but it was, you know, basically the first motocross game that they really tackled, because they'd been making the MotoGP games forever. But let's go to MXGP first, the very first MXGP game that came out in 2015. If we look at footage, I'm going to pull some footage up on the screen right now, and you'll just hear the background of the MXGP 2020 game the whole time, so I apologize for that. But if we look at footage of MXGP 1, you know, some of the things that stand out immediately are just like so stiff, little movement, not a lot of ease of action with the rider. You couldn't whip, you couldn't do anything in the air with the rider back then. And graphically, it was, you know, okay for its time, but I would say behind a lot of other games within that genre for its time. So in those two departments specifically, they've made a lot of improvements. Now, one thing that I think they've taken some steps backwards with is more or less like just the ground reaction. I wouldn't say the ground physics. Like the bike in MXGP 2020 versus MXGP 1 basically doesn't seem to really do the same things to bumps as it did back then. And I feel like the gravity aspect of it comes into play a little bit, where in MXGP 1, as fast as you were going off of a tabletop, is pretty much as long as you would go off of a jump. You could over jump it, you could short jump it. It's pretty hard to like really far over jump a tabletop in MXGP 2020, whereas in MXGP 1, like, you could quite easily do it because the gravity, the speed, all those things factored in. Like, you had to be a little bit more precise. And, you know, MXGP 2020, I feel like you can just almost hold it wide open everywhere, which is one of those things that diehard fans don't like about games like these. But comparison from MXGP 1 to MXGP 2020, yes, I think there are marked improvements. The physical aspect of the game in the air has gotten better. Is it the, you know, perfect solution? No, it's everybody wants MX versus ATV reflex, it seems like. It's not that, but you can do some things in the air. You can move the bike around. I think the biggest problem really MXGP 2020 and MXGP 2021 eventually will have is the rider movements don't seem to really match with what the bike is or should be doing when you're moving the controller around. So that's like one of the biggest gripes that I've always had about it, is they need to somehow meld those two things together, where the rider motion is separate. It is its own stick, for example, kind of like Reflex was, kind of like MX Bikes is now. And the movements that you have in the game, you know, are pretty determinative off of what you see in real life, based on how someone enters a corner and where their body positioning is, and how you have to get on the front of the bike, and not always just in this bent over weird position where the rider just seems like it's leaning into corners awkwardly and just doesn't do stuff correctly. That was a problem in MXGP 1. It's still a problem in MXGP 2021 in my opinion. But anyway, let's move on to a middle range game, because if we're talking about this 3 or 4 year jump, you move to like MXGP 3. It was 2 years after MXGP 1. They started to move to, I think this was their first game on Unreal 4. They added ruts to MXGP 3, and it seemed like they were going to make some positive steps. The problem I had with this game was there was so much like wrong about the actual like look of the game, I guess. Like every jump on the track was flattened out. The tracks were very, very flat and minimalistic and didn't have a lot of elevation or, you know, big jumps or anything like that, which is still somewhat of a problem in MXGP 2021 and MXGP 2020, I still feel like. But overall, you know, I think that they have made some improvements in that department. And then there's, you know, the little things that are wrong with MXGP 3 versus MXGP 2020, in my opinion, that are like the rear tire didn't move at an accurate speed. Sometimes it felt like you're just hovering above the ground, but then they also made realistic-ish working ruts that you could lay into, so sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. And then they just completely went away with it from MXGP 3. They could have continued on with the rut system that they had in place, but they didn't, and then they moved on to other physical aspects of the game that they were trying to improve. And, you know, a huge difference that they've made with these games, in my opinion at least, is first person. I feel like first person with MXGP 2020 is some of the best first person stuff in a video game for a motocross game. Like, it's, in my opinion, close to, if not up there, with some of the simulated games and how they work in first person in MXGP 2020. And I feel like that's similar in Supercross 4, and it's going to be similar in MXGP 2021. I feel like where the first-person aspect of the game is something that people get drawn to. It's people, you know, people get drawn to it in MX vs. ATV All Out as well. They say it's way better for All Out to play it in first person than it is in third person, and some people say the same thing about MXGP games now. They've done a complete overhaul, I feel like, since MXGP 3 till MXGP 2020, where they've made these market improvements in the first-person gameplay and how it feels and how it looks and all those things like that. So in terms of a more immersive aspect, I feel like as a casual gamer, someone would pick this up and be like, this feels pretty cool. Like, it's got some good movements and motions to it and everything like that. So, you know, again, there's just some improvements and some steps in reverse, I feel like, with every game, with every new game that comes out. And the people that are critics of it, that are, you know, the diehards that want a simulated game, like, I get it. I come from a simulated background. Like, I started Start Your Systems, and it was almost exclusively sim content. I was a pro in MX Simulator at the time, and you know, raced competitively for 5 years and was one of the best in that game. And I know what it feels like to be at a high level in a simulated game and how good that feels. And I don't think I've ever found that same enjoyment with any of these games. Whereas there's a lot of people that don't have the time or the, you know, the desire, I guess, to put the time in to get good at those simulated games. And this is a good alternative for that, in my opinion. So again, I'm not trying to make excuses for Milestone and some of the shortcomings that they have with their games and some of the things that people get frustrated at. And I know that there's other YouTubers or streamers out there that, you know, they just rip them apart, and that's their prerogative. I've just never been one that looks at these games and goes, this is a hot steaming pile of garbage and they need to start over from square one. Like, there are problems 100% with these games. You know, I still feel like they don't have gravity right. They need to get the ruts correct. The air physics are still quite wonky. It doesn't matter how much they've tweaked them and made them a little bit better. There's still some problems with them, in my opinion. And because of that, it's made it less enjoyable for a diehard fan of, you know, the sport and of these games to really get behind these games, because the feeling of it is just so strange at times, really. But then you play it for a little while, you get used to the feeling, and then you decide that it's not as bad as maybe you thought it was. So I guess what I'm trying to get to in a roundabout way with this video is to say there's always two sides of the coin. And for the fans that are going to look at MXGP 2021 as it comes out in late November and picks it up and goes, great, another $50, $60 game that's the exact same game, nothing has really changed, etc., etc. Look for the little things that have changed before you just jump to a conclusion about how wrong the game is. And then on top of that, go back to this game 3 years ago, you know, when it was MXGP Pro, for example. Like, go play MXGP Pro versus MXGP 2021. and just see if you feel enough of a difference to at least change your opinion a little bit, change your tune, and get kind of the full backstory of it. Because all too often I feel like people just immediately have a knee-jerk reaction to these new games that come out, and they just say, you know, stop supporting Milestone or stop supporting Rainbow Studios. And I think that's the wrong answer. Like, we need to be constructive and criticize the things that need to be fixed and try to get them changed. I feel like I've tried really hard to be constructively critique, if you will, of these games. I always go back to, I remember when MXGP 2019 was being launched, and you know, we had gone over to Europe to test the game, and I sat for probably in 2 consecutive nights, like 3 or 4 straight hours with the developers of the game. One was a lead designer, one was you know, just one of the head developers of the game, and they were, you know, trying to forward think with the game and make these steps in the progress and stuff like that. And I was not shy about my criticism with the game. I don't go over there and just basically, you know, for lack of a better word, kiss ass. And I tried to make these changes like known and things that should be felt and a difference looked at. And what I can tell you is that in those conversations that I had 2 years ago versus coming into this MXGP 2021 game now, some of the criticisms that I had that night have been changed or felt or heard or what have you. And to me, that's some of the progress that I can see. People always like to criticize Milestone and Rainbow because they don't respond to fan criticism or fan feedback. I think Rainbow does a pretty good job with that, because I feel like they've listened to a lot of what people have said about freeing up the air physics, and you know, then All Out's physics even had a rehaul right in the middle of the game coming out, like 2 or 3 years into it coming out, where they like basically made the game a little bit heavier and it wasn't as loose and floaty feeling, and then there was a lot of suspension changes that you could make and make the game better. And as many people talk crap about that game, there's a devout community behind that game that thinks it's a fantastic game, and good on them. Like, I hate that there's so much negative backlash about all these games. Like, it doesn't matter which genre you fall in. It's awesome that there's so many moto games for us to choose from. If you are a bikes fan, be an MX Bikes fan. You don't have to suddenly criticize everybody that's a big MXGP fan or a big Supercross the Game fan or a big All Out fan, and vice versa. Like, it doesn't need to be you know, these warring sides, in my opinion. I think it's just everyone has a preference of, you know, how much time in a day that they have to play a video game and how much they want out of a video game and what they feel like should be in a game. And if a certain game from Rainbow Studios, Milestone, Piboso, or JLV answers those questions, then go play that game and be happy with it. I will continue to remain happy that there are so many games for us to choose from, and a lot of games that me as a moto fan gets to play and enjoy. So anyway, just trying to have like a pretty open and honest discussion. I realize that some of my thoughts and opinions will not mimic what you guys have to say, and that's totally fine. Like, I'm not here trying to change your mind about everything, and I'm not trying to tell you that these games are must-buys and go out and get them tomorrow and stuff like that. I just like coming on here and trying to present some evidence and some facts as to why some of the decisions are made and why some of the things aren't changed and why some of the things look the way they do in these games. And in hindsight, look back at how much change they have had. Has it been positive or has it been negative? So anyway, MXGP 2021 coming out November 30th on all the next-gen consoles and all the, I guess it'd be the 8th gen consoles, 8th and 9th gen consoles, except I don't believe Nintendo Switch they're going to have a game for, but they will be having PC Steam, obviously, so I'll be playing a lot of that. But if you guys have any comments or questions, or you just want to open the dialogue and continue talking about this, please go down to the comment section below. I'd be happy to discuss further with some of my thoughts and you know, not just gloss over what you guys have to say. I really want to hear real feedback. And as we move into MXGP 2021 in the coming month, I think it's just time to get, you know, maybe a little bit excited and hyped and see what features come with this new game and what career mode aspects are going to be like, and whether the multiplayer features are going to be a little bit better and there's not going to be glitches and stuff like that. And instead of just jumping to an immediate conclusion of bashing the game, how about we play it first before we just, you know, decide to completely write it off and say it's a bad game like everybody wants to say. So that's my thoughts and opinions. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, appreciate you guys stopping by, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the next one. But Kellen going to sign off here from Start Your Systems, and we'll see you guys later. So long for now.